When we talk about zero trust, when we look at how we are living in the digital age and how disruptive technology has come in to practically disrupt everything, when we look at COVID-accelerated digital transformation, CADIT, it's very clear that we're living in a day and age when we can no longer continue doing things the same way and to expect a different result. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our discussion today, let me invite you guys to please just quickly introduce yourselves. And as you introduce yourselves, give us very quickly in 1 minute your understanding of the Zero Trust security model and its application. So we'll begin with the ladies as we come this way. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Okay. So my name is Laura Titch. I am, as Francis mentioned, one of the founders of She Hacks Kenya, which is a community of women hackers in Kenya, and we do training for women and students who are planning to get into the cybersecurity field. I'm also the CEO and founder of Boltec Consultancy, which is a cybersecurity consultancy firm that deals mainly with human rights organizations, civil society organizations, and underrepresented groups. So we offer cybersecurity solutions to them. And besides that, I'm also on the Cybersecurity Advisory Board for the Ford Foundation. Zero Trust. Is everyone awake here right now? I need you to say 4 things with me. Never trust, always verify.
Always verify.
That is what Zero Trust is. So Zero Trust works on the principles that you can never trust anyone. Previously, we used to have this concept called trust but verify, where organizations, as long as you were on premise and you were connected to their network, then you were trusted. So all you had to do was verify that it was you. But now with the advent of work from home and remote working during COVID, Zero Trust became a concept that a lot of organizations began to implement, because what it is you're saying, we do not trust anyone. Any service, any device that wants access to our network, to our resources for this company, we will not trust them. They have to verify that they're authorized to access, so that we give them access to our work resources. So that's my short definition of Zero Trust.
Thank you, Laura. Judy?
Yeah, that was me here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Judy again. I'll just define Zero Trust for me. Because we have a lot of things going in the digital transformation space, it's becoming very hard to keep up.
Yeah.
And I like to use worldly examples. When you're dating, you don't marry the first woman you go out with, right? You start to understand her, you start to know who she is, you take out on dates, you take out clubbing, figure out who she is when she's drunk and who she's not when she's drunk, yeah? It's for that life cycle is you trying to understand who she is. Even at the end of the day, even after marriage, there's still things you figure out later, right? So that trust momentum is what has come into the digital space. We've seen with all these new concepts, new technologies, they come and say, for instance, I think Google is here, like, a platform, you can trust it. But still, you get hacked even on that platform, yeah? So building the trust capacity based on what you know is best for your business is what I'd consider Zero Trust. You don't have trust on the business, you don't have trust on the platform. But as you move ahead, you start to understand, this is Kamau's laptop, that's not Kamau's laptop. So let's allow this Kamau, this other Kamau, let's figure out who he is. For me, that's Zero Trust. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judy.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Samson Ogada. I work for CloudLogic Limited as Senior Security Specialist. Previous to that, I used to work for Sophos, and previous to that, I used to work for Cyberom. So I've been in the company for close to 15 years now. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of customers in fintech and the rest. So I really understand where you're coming from and also what zero trust means to all of us. So just to echo what my fellow panelists have said here, I want to look at it from the identity angle. Zero trust is all about identity. I mean, we want to give you, we want to authorize you, and we want to authenticate you. And all this revolves around identity. Just to add on to what Madam Guru has said, if I, as Samson, comes in, first of all, you need to know me that this is Samson coming in. You need to know the devices that Samson has, so that when I'm authorized in, then I know that this is what Samson can do. This is where Samson is authorized to do. This is what he does. And other than that, you come around and take an account of, did Samson do what he was supposed to do here? So to me, other than just trusting, we also add in the identity, and all that collectively means zero trust.
Thank you, Samson. Kelvin?
Good evening, everyone.
It's good
Can
evening.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kelvin Bogo, KCB, cybersecurity specialist in charge of data security and privacy. Prior to that, I worked at NCBA Bank as a cyber assurance manager, and before that, I was at Deloitte as a cybersecurity consultant. So I've been in the industry for quite some time now. My understanding to what zero trust is basically, to echo whatever my panelists have said, is always keep on verifying whatever is coming into the private network. In DevSecOps, there is that continuous integration, continuous development aspect of it. But now in zero trust, there is that aspect of continuous identification and verification of a user or a device, traffic that is coming into the private network, and lots of so much segmentation and moving security away from the perimeter angle to the user level. By now, I need to identify you as a user from your device, not just basically from a centralized point of view, from the device yourself, where you're connecting to the private network point of view. Yeah.
Right. Great. So now that we have that out of the way, and we now have a basic understanding that the basic concept here is, never trust, but always verify. Yeah. And when we look at it from this perspective, that it's a continuous journey. It's not a plug and play kind of approach where you say that, okay, you press a button and now I have zero trust. Yeah. So it's a continuous journey of continuous monitoring, looking at the culture, looking at the processes, and looking at the solutions in place. So coming back to you, Judy, what would you say, because when we look at zero trust, there are various concepts that we need to look at. I heard you talk about, privileged access, and I also heard you talk about the secure by design principle when you're looking at the application, the whole development journey. So what would you say are the key concepts to consider as you go through the application development process and you want to integrate zero trust into that?
I would say DevSecOps actually is a zero trust element of it.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing in every development process, you're verifying everything that's coming in. All the guests coming in from Kenya, Rwanda, wherever, all of them coming into one single pipeline. You're verifying who they are. But the key thing to remember is with zero trust in application security is 1, culture, 2, tools, and 3, expertise. You need a culture. If your developers are building, let's say, on a single Docker image, you are providing the Docker image. If I bypass that, and I know the Docker image has security protocols on it, maybe it's annoying to me as a developer, it has some issues. You see, you've already bypassed the culture. They don't want to do that. It's a bottleneck, and we know security for most developers is a bottleneck. So you need to implement it as a culture. Some companies have gone where developers will call you like, hey, I'm deploying this application. I would like to understand some security. You'd actually give me some security I should think before I start developing this. Yeah? So that's culture, that's tools. 3, tools come with budgets. So for whatever I was showing actually before, those are open source. So when you say you can't achieve automation, then you're lying to yourself, because you can't achieve automation. It's cheap, it's free, you just need 3, expertise. Do you know somebody who can come and embed Jenkins or this threat modeling into your pipeline so that it works perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe Laura, you can tell us, because you run SheHacks and you're also a cybersecurity consultant. What are some of the scenarios where you have seen the zero trust model being applied, and how has it helped to mitigate against attacks in the disruptive technology age?
Thanks, Francis. I can give one major example. We all, or most of us at least, we use Netflix, right?
Yeah.
So zero trust is a concept that was coined in 2010 by us, a research analyst. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly for some of us, Netflix is one of the organizations that were the pioneers of implementing zero trust. So Netflix came up with this approach called LISA, and it stands for Location Independent Security Approach, because Netflix is one of the first organizations that was supporting remote work, and they realized that with most of their employees working off-premise, off Netflix premises, it was sort of difficult to implement security for all these employees outside of the network perimeter within their organization. So what they did is they started their own model, LISA, and what it does is with that model, Netflix is able to sort of oversee the securities of all their employees outside of their HQ. Everyone from Netflix who's working remotely, they are protected by some sort of protocols that follows their strategy called LISA. And if you look back at the history of cyber breaches at Netflix, they've actually not encountered major cyber breaches. They have encountered the normal ones. For example, some credentials have been stolen, right? So you as a Netflix user, once in a while you might get that your credentials have been compromised, but that is not a problem of Netflix within the organization itself, rather the end user. Some users do this thing called credential stuffing, where you use the same password, the same username for multiple services. So for example, you have a username and password for your Netflix, the same one you're using for your Google, the same one you're using for something else. So that makes it easier for you to be a target of credential compromise. Some of the other attacks are insider threats. For example, I think 2 years ago, there was a bit of protest because of a show that was put up on Netflix by Dave Chappelle, and some people protested. So people within the organization, someone within the organization exposed some sensitive data. But now for the other cybersecurity threats for Netflix, you're hard pressed to find anything that is as serious like ransomware or even DDoS attacks. It's very rare for Netflix to be attacked in using such attack vectors. Yeah.
Wow, okay. Thanks, thank you for that example. And because today we are speaking to people in the fintech industry, by the way, for those of you who've logged into the Wi-Fi, and we have Judy and Laura here, all I can say is, poleni sana. Yeah? Yeah, but because we are talking to people in the fintech industry, maybe Samson, you could tell us, what are some of the challenges that you foresee for organizations that want to implement zero trust, and especially from, well, both on-prem, but even mostly from, because everyone is now moving to the cloud, from a cloud perspective. What are those challenges, and how can we in the fintech industry overcome those challenges?
All right, thank you so much for the question. First of all, I want to just take it one step back and maybe just answer a question that you've not asked. How do organizations achieve zero trust in the first place? Achieving zero trust is surprisingly easy, though it's challenging, just like you've said. And we can get this by looking at what are the principles of zero trust. So zero trust, first of all, is all about security. So you start off by getting the fundamental security in place. So you're talking about firewall, you're talking about endpoint protection, you're talking about IPS, you're talking about sandbox. Once you have those in place, then you go to step number 2. You need to bring in identity. So you need to bring in solutions that can help you identify your people, identify your users, identify your devices. So you're talking about the PAM solutions, you're talking about LDAP, the access, the Active Directory. We are talking about NAC solutions to help us identify the users. Number 3, we are going about network segmentation. So here we are talking about the routers, we are talking about the switches, we are talking about access points and the rest. And number 4, we talk about continuous monitoring. So here we are bringing in the SIEMs, we bring in the SOAM and other monitoring tools that you have in place. Number 5, there's also the aspect of protection of data security and protection. So here we could also factor in solutions like encryption and the rest. Now, where a challenge comes in is bringing all these things and making them work together. Because as long as they're not working together, the firewall remains a firewall, endpoint remains an endpoint, access point remains that, sandbox remains that, but when they come together and when they're able to collaborate and correlate and help defend our systems and organizations, now we are talking about zero trust. So that's where the real challenge is, bringing in all these solutions and making them be able to work for you. Luckily, there are some organizations that have found a way of coming up with something that closely would say a starting point towards this. If I name a few vendors like, let's say, Cisco, the Cisco umbrella, who are bringing up all their solutions under one roof. There's a Fortinet with the security fabric. There's Checkpoint with Infinity. There's Sophos with synchronized security. Those are just to mention but a few of some of the vendors who are working towards zero trust, plus many others. But some of the challenges that zero trust face is the complexity, just like I've explained, setting up all these systems and making them work together, bearing the fact that some of them would be from different vendors. That would be number 1. Number 2 would be monitoring and control. How do you monitor themselves? For example, the SIEM. Okay, we know the SIEM monitors everyone and brings all this data in a common place whereby you can be able to consume the data and see what's happening on the network. But who monitors the SIEM? Once the SIEM has shown you all this data, where does that data go to? So those are the challenges that we also need to look into and ensure that as we work towards zero trust, we can be able also to take care of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. So I think we're getting somewhere, because we've come from really talking about understanding this animal or this model that we are calling zero trust, and then we've also looked at real case examples of implementation, and we looked at challenges. So in an attempt to bring it home, Kelvin, maybe you can tell us. So a two-pronged question, or twofold question for you. In terms of the frameworks in the industry right now, are there any that you could think of that can be used to align with the implementation of zero trust? And then also in line with that, how do we balance security with user experience, user and customer experience? Because you find that you don't want to be at a situation where you've implemented such rigorous security that it affects the user experience. So where's the balance? Where's the balance, and what kind of frameworks can help to achieve that balance?
Thank you. So I'll start with the frameworks. So borrowing some concept from NIST 800-207. So there is a speculative guidelines on zero trust, implementing zero trust, and the expectation of the framework in terms of achieving a fully fledged zero trust environment.
You could pull up the mic just a bit. Yeah.
So, and one of the quickest thing from the borrowing from the NIST 800-207 framework is the aspect of continuous, minimizing the aspect of if in case there is a breach within the organization, minimizing that impact that the business is going to feel from that breach. That is one requirement that the framework has. And then secondly, there is that aspect of continuous verification of whatever aspect that is coming into the organization. This moves cut across from the devices and as well on the network layer, which is now the traffic. And then lastly, there is that aspect of collecting all contexts that are originating from the devices and users. So this more of borrowed from the aspect of the endpoint management and endpoint security. And we've seen a growth in from the whole concept of zero trust. Don't trust and make sure you verify. We've seen even now other frameworks coming into play, not just to broaden up the aspect of zero trust. We've seen the SASE framework. SASE framework, which is secure access service edge, still playing a bigger role in extending the functionalities of zero trust and as well the implementation of zero trust in the ecosystem. And to the next question, towards bringing a balance not to affect the user experience, for sure, depending on the implementation. If you take an example, let's say, for example, an implementation involves deploying a trust broker that is on a cloud-based. So ideally, users are going to expect some bit of latency with what is coming into the, maybe accessing resources from a private network. Additionally, maybe expect an instance whereby that aspect of continuous verification, in some instances you find MFA, multi-factor authentication, is one of the key components that be required for you to identify yourself to access some application. There's still that aspect of maybe some bit of disturbance or interference with how users are used to access resources or access some data within the organization. But in relation to how the business or the fintech, to put it into context to how fintech organizations are growing or the fintech industry is shaping up, there is increased collaboration of data exchange. Let's say suppliers, who in this case would be the vendors, customers, as well staff members. They are all trying to access pool of data and resources around that. So there's an aspect of requirement of ensuring that at any single point, make sure that these policies are maintained, and these policies that are governing what user is supposed to access within the organization, within the context, is fully managed and continuously monitored. And the solution, before even moving to a point you're going to maybe deploy zero trust as a framework, adopting zero trust as a framework or a policy within the organization, there's need to understand what is in place, the ecosystem, the whole ecosystem within the organization. This is the reason you're going to find maybe depending on the bandwidth maybe the organization has, or the bandwidth within the organization in this case. Depending on which approach you take towards deploying your trust brokers for zero trust, it's going to have that effect to the users or whoever is querying data within the organization. So this is something that has to be taken into consideration based on how it is in place within the organization, and as well what is the way forward, what is the strategy towards, or what is the policy in terms of you come into context and have everything completely definitive in a way. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just borrowing resources or borrowing technologies from other instances and not completely getting to understand whatever is in place in the organization.
All right. Time has really flown, and I really just want to, before I give my panelists an opportunity to give their parting shots, could there be a burning question in the audience? Yeah, there's a gentleman at the back. Maybe you could make your way to where the mic is and ask your question. And please just start by introducing yourself.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, my name is Alan from Inuka, Africa, and my question to the panelists is, as we discuss about having zero trust within organizations, this aspect of also being able to trust the organizations that we partner with or work with. Say, for example, we trust that the mast that our phones are all connected to is an authorized mast.
Sorry, could you just move a bit closer to the mic?
Sorry?
Yeah.
I was saying that we trust that our devices are connecting to the networks that they're supposed to actually connect to. But in our country, so to speak, hacks are always rumors. So how do I know to trust that, and especially to those who are doing the hacking, so to speak, that once we hear out there, we see a rumor that so-and-so has been breached, then what should the procedures be for those companies to disclose to us when something like that happens, and now they confirm to us that, oh yeah, we've hired so-and-so, and now we are good, and yes, we were hacked, please change your passwords because something may be compromised. And you know, what's your take on the aspect of that we never really get official information from those who have been breached when breaches do occur, even after they have actually gone through the effort of making it better, but they didn't tell us that, oh yeah, we actually fumbled a bit, so now just don't trust us explicitly, so that we know people who connect to those networks, whether they may be partner APIs or even customer to an organization, to know that these are the procedures I should know to be able to trust a network even after it's been breached.
Okay. Right, you guys got the question?
Yeah.
So from an incident response perspective, Judy, you want to?
Yes. Personally, I prefer to work with companies that were hacked before. If I'm a client, I will still work with NIVAS even after the breach. Why? Because they were hacked and I know they've taken security measures. Just because you weren't hacked doesn't mean you're not hackable. Probably means your hackers are very resilient.
Yeah.
They've been in your system for 10 years and they have no plans to be exposed. Yeah. Okay. So how you know you get hacked? I think this is a compliance thing. The data protection, the ODPC office has that stated. Once you get hacked, you have to report this within a span of 72 hours. And yes, most companies will deny because of reputation issues. Yeah, but there's nothing much you can do. I'll give you very bad advice. I personally go to the dark web to see what's happening. There's real dark there. There's a fintech that was hacked the other day. They say that they weren't hacked. Went there and I was like, okay. So that's bad advice. I didn't say don't quote me, but it's an option.
And if you go, don't buy drugs.
Yeah.
And weapons.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you want to know if the company has gotten hacked, especially if you're technical, you can actually figure it out from people who work there. They will tell you what happened. If not, they will have to report it to the data protection officer, especially when customer data was leaked, for you to verify that is actually hacked. And yes, we do have rumors as well, so that will give you a few options. I'm sure it doesn't completely help 100%, but it gives you some options.
All right, okay, yes.
Yeah, I also just want to add on what she said. I want to echo, was it former President Kenyatta or it was CS for Health who said security starts with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just because I've not been hacked doesn't mean you don't have to trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and that is the essence of zero trust that we are talking about here. Don't trust anyone. In some spheres, we even say don't even trust yourself as well, because the left brain and the right brain may not be coordinating. So we need to ensure that at every time we put in the measures, proper security measures in place. Make sure you verify everything before you engage in. If it's a network, make sure you verify before you connect to. Don't go on opening your bank accounts on each and every available connection that you connect to. For example, just make it a practice, make it a policy, make it your own internal policy to ensure that before you engage in anything, before you interact with anything, just take those preliminary measures and make sure you protect yourself.
Okay. Yes, Laura, and then Kelvin. Yes,
Okay.
then we can wind up.
I'm going to look at it. I agree with what both Judy and Samson have said, but I'm going to look at it from a different perspective, from the organization's perspective. There's a big problem we have in Kenya currently, where whenever an organization, even financial institutions, whenever they are hacked or breached, they do not disclose that information to the public. And that makes people lose trust in you as an organization, because when they find out about the breach months later, years later, the same thing happened to a password manager last year. There's a major password manager that was breached last year, and accounts were compromised. When the news first came out, people were like, okay, it was breached, but they handled it. But then later people found out that it had been breached two other times before in the same year. And towards the end of the year, we actually saw a lot of people migrating from that password manager to others. Because I think it was Martin from Seriano who said earlier, one of the motivations for attack is reputational damage. And if you as an organization, you're not confident to share that information with your clients, then already you're going to lose your own or damage your own reputation. So please disclose that information and make sure that you act on whatever security threat you are encountering.
Yeah, disclosure is very important. And finally, Kelvin?
Right. So from my point, I think I'll put it in a few words. Trying to contextualize everything zero trust and the SASE framework that I just talked about. So it's important for organization to as well come into understanding, especially for fintech organization, and see the different processes that needs to be aligned with the zero trust or the zero trust approach towards security. If you find mostly there's this belief that if I authenticate you at the point of getting network access, let's say for example your device has been posted and you already have been access to the internal network, everything else from there now becomes that everything else seems to be broadcasted. Applications within the organization, you can be known to be moving from any subnet within the organization and such. And that opens up so much gap in terms of lateral movement in case of a breach. Okay, so you find even now attacks are becoming more sophisticated with time. So we've seen hacker groups coming into play, ransomware are coming into play. And you find that the way they're spreading to the network is then just the fact that they can be able to reach the device that is next to them. But now with the concept of zero trust, we're just limiting the aspect of if you don't have access to seeing this guy, you definitely cannot be able to reach. For as much as you're in the same network, if you're not authorized to see this guy, it's not even going to be broadcasted to you. So ideally, it's important for organizations to come into play and understand that concept of zero trust and align it with their internal policies, just to see how they can strengthen the whole security posture of the organization.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, my panelists. We've been talking about implementing zero trust within the fintech industry. A couple of pointers. Yeah, never trust, but always verify. Remember that zero trust implementation is a journey. It's not a one-time kind of thing. And of course, there are various principles that you need to consider and look into. And also remember that whatever approach that you use and whichever solutions that you put in place, these solutions need to be able to talk to each other, even through as you monitor your environment. So once again, a very big thank you to Laura, to Judy, to Samson, to Kelvin, and thank you also for being such a wonderful audience. And yeah, thank you so much. Have a good evening, and back to you, Nje here.